Yeah, I'll do it right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it right now so I don't forget. That's what he says.
Yeah,
To me
because
too,
you have
like from whatever, you know.
Hands up. Look at that sign out there and see what you think from a distance.
All right, gentlemen, we're gonna get going here.
Get right at the spell.
It doesn't look
Or
like
not.
a G, it looks like a C.
There are worse things that could have looked.
I remember that, yes.
Fast. That's dim.
All right. We'll call the April 8th meeting to order. If I could get one of the council members to read the land acknowledgement.
I'd be happy to read it tonight.
Awesome.
The Chinookan peoples known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechakli was located near today's Blue Lake Park. In ancestral life, these people included seasonal round and resource gathering, stewardship from the Wapato fields, and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced diseases in the early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty in 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. Excuse me. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systematic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many of the indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by their collective work in many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be the guest upon these lands.
Well, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move to comments, citizen comments on non-agenda items.
And we do have one scheduled comment, and that's Kevin Mansfield. He's already signed in.
Welcome.
Come. Seems like I was just here. I guess I was a couple hours ago.
Yeah. Time flies, doesn't it?
Thank you for giving me a couple extra minutes. For the record, my name is Kevin Mansfield, and I live at 16343 Northeast Russell Street, Portland, Oregon, 97230. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2001. Since then, I've been a public policy ambassador with the Michael J. Fox Foundation for the last 13 years. I've been a facilitator with Parkinson's Resources of Oregon, just turned 24 years this month. We want to thank you, Mayor and City Council, for proclaiming Wood Village as Parkinson's Awareness Month. This means a lot to the people living here in Wood Village and all of us. I want to also make sure it was brought out today's meeting that we thank you for letting us have this beautiful building for our support group and also for the proclamation and also for advertising about our Parkinson's support group that meets here. It was very kind and we all feel great gratitude for that. Parkinson's disease is the second largest neurological disease, and it is predicted to become number one very soon. Just to give you an idea of how fast this disease is growing, when I was diagnosed in 2001, there were only about 14 to 16 support groups in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Today, 24 years later, we now have 55 to 60 support groups. Parkinson's used to be heard from people about 20 years ago or so, only in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've traveled around to a lot of to a lot of city councils and different places. And I've heard from one city council member that knows a family, their 7-year-old son has it and their 12-year-old daughter has it. This is terrible at how young of an age this is becoming now. They're predicting that within the next 15 years, that Parkinson's will double in numbers. There's an estimated 90 million or 90,000 people diagnosed with PD in the US every year. Last year, when I was here, I talked a little bit about a bill that I was trying to get passed for Oregon to have a state registry, and you were one of 13 city councils that said that they would like to give testimony if asked. I would like to give you an update as to where we are with that. On the first of this year, I reached out to our representatives and senator, and to see if we could get this reintroduced. The session started about mid-January. On January 23rd, we had a 3-day notice that Senate Bill 718 was going to have a public hearing in Salem. I thought that I was going to be the only one down there, but I was accompanied by a person from the Brian Grant Foundation, a person from CND Life Sciences, and one other person that showed up with me in Salem. We had 4 people join us on Zoom that gave their testimonies, and we had many write in their testimonies. On February 25th, the council had a session, and they voted on whether or not they were going to continue this or not, and it passed with a 4-0 vote. It was then passed to the Ways and Means Committee where it is sitting now. Now we're waiting for the Ways and Means to hold their meeting and have an open session for people to give their testimony on why the state registry is so important. I was told that the Ways and Means would have an open session sometime during the middle to end of this month or early in May. I'm asking you, Mayor and City Council, if you would still like to be part of helping get this bill passed by giving testimony when the time comes. If so, if I could please get the information sent to me as to who to contact when the time comes for the hearing. I want to thank you again for the proclamation and for all of your wonderful support that you have given to us in the Parkinson's community. It's very much appreciated, and for listening to me tonight. Thank you.
This is an amazing opportunity. I know this is something we've been doing. I think the proclamation, at least since I've been on council, every year. So it's an honor to be able to continue that tradition and lend our support in any way. Others would like to comment?
Kevin, I have just a question for you in terms of the support and what's going on with the slashing of budgets at the federal level. Is that, are you starting to feel any impact, or are you anticipating that any federal funds that might help support the Parkinson effort and research, any information about that at this point?
To my understanding, the funding for this bill will come through the state instead of federal. And we believe that it will only cost about $250,000. And me talking to the senator that's running this, Senator Gorsuch, and his team that have been working with Ways and Means, and they said with that price, they don't think it will be a problem at all. It's not like I'm asking for $1 billion. But as far as like research and stuff, on federal level, we are feeling an impact of it because of them cutting down on science research and everything else. And the FDA that we get all of our, our new medicines and stuff going through, it takes approximately 5 years from the time it's submitted to them to get out to us that need it.
So and I appreciated the state level funding. At the federal level, though, if I heard you correctly, you are feeling some of the impacts and anticipate that?
Yes,
Is that right?
with it being towards the science and
Yeah.
research and
Okay.
everything else and the FDA funding and
Yeah.
everything else they're throwing at us. But I think that we won't have a problem. My personal feeling is we won't have a problem with getting this to pass
Yeah.
and stuff because of it. To my understanding, it's coming from the state and not the federal.
Thank you.
Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does, yeah. Both, on both places, both levels, state and federal. Thank you.
Well, sir, I thank you for what you're doing. I didn't realize that people that young could get that disease. I thought it was just for older people like me.
It's a growing disease. It's number 2 right now behind Alzheimer's, and we believe it's going to be number 1 here before long. And I've heard rumor or word that when it becomes number 1, they're going to consider it a pandemic because of how fast it's growing.
Why is it growing like that?
We don't know.
Don't know.
And we don't know the true cause of it. A lot of my friends or people that I know have been from military through Agent Orange, which caused Parkinson's, it caused a lot of other diseases. I had a close friend of mine die about 6 years ago because of Agent Orange. He had Parkinson's, he had diabetes, he had cancer, he had all kinds of other problems. It's due to also chemicals, pesticides and stuff. People get it from that. The chemicals and stuff get seep into the ground, and then people that live off of well water have gotten a disease through the system. I mean, there's just a number of reasons why. And the reason that we want this bill to pass so much for the state of Oregon, Washington has it, California has it, and Idaho just came up with it, I think, last year. I'd have to check my records, but I think that that's when they started the registry. But we'll be able to find out exactly how many people in Oregon have the disease. We think it's between 20 and 25,000 people. But we'll get when it goes into effect, we'll get everybody's input and we'll know what the hot spots are. We'll know what nationalities are hit more, you know. We'll know what sexes hit more. And then we'll get a general idea of what the people are doing in these hot spots. Are they farmers? Are they in production? Because I think I got it through all of my businesses that I've dealt with when I was able to work, like welding, a lot of welders and stuff, breathing in all those fumes and stuff back, in the late 70s, when I was old enough and went to a steel mill and I was working there for 6 years. We didn't believe or know about mass. And sitting there grinding all the metal fibers and aluminum and everything else, breathing that into our systems. And I worked around a lot of pesticides and herbicides and stuff. So all of that goes into factor, but it's so wide and it's just growing too fast. And it's very sad that it hits our young children now.
And
what was the bill? It was 778?
It's Senate Bill, where is it? I know that it
I
here.
want to say it was
Senate Bill 718.
718.
Counselor Clark, any questions, comments?
No, but I'll be happy to look it up. And I just joined the meeting, so I only just got a little bit of that briefing.
I think if testimony is needed, I can volunteer myself to be. We'll also reach out to.
You can send information directly to me and I'll make sure the council receives it.
Okay, thank you. I think I
I
still
believe
have
you
your
still have my
information.
email.
If
I
not,
have
if you
yours,
could
so I'll send you a
If you could
little
update
note.
it to me, would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And then we can reach out to our senator and our state representative as well, and maybe send them a letter of support.
Thank you.
Encouraging them for the bill as well.
Senator Chris Gorsuch and Representative Zach Hudson,
Zach Hudson.
and also Representative Rios Rico.
Ruiz,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And he's also on it also.
yes. Thank you so much again, and we look forward to continue our partnership with you guys.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll go to the reading of the Vietnamese proclamation.
Proclaiming April 30th Vietnamese American Remembrance Day. Whereas Vietnamese refugees have proudly resided in the city of Wood Village, state of Oregon, since the conclusion of Vietnam War on April 30th, 1975. And whereas Vietnamese Americans have put forth their full toiling energy building the city of Wood Village, state of Oregon, in a multitude of prominent areas, including industry, economy, culture, education, and military service. And whereas Vietnamese Americans have counted on the state of Oregon, USA, as being their second heart, mind, and family homeland. And whereas every Vietnamese Americans observe Remembrance Day on April 30th to solemnly honor 58,000 American soldiers and more than 300,000 South Vietnamese soldiers who sacrificed their lives in the line of duty for freedom and democracy in South Vietnam from 1955 to 1975.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to our public safety report.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. See everyone.
Wow.
This is a great chair. Thank you.
There's something special about the chair.
All right. First, I'd like to start just going through the overall report. Just some notes on there. You'll see everything's trending in a downward progression for the most part. Just overall since the start of this report in 2022. For the month of March, we had one stolen vehicle that was reported and it was recovered a few days later in Gresham. If we look at the activity report chart, another note I'd just like to say, I know I touched on this last month, but calls for service continue to be the lowest since we've seen of January of 2020. We had 8 traffic accidents reported in March. Most of those were around the 238th corridor area, as we usually see. But that is a lower number of traffic crashes than we have seen over the last several month period. So I'm hopeful that we can continue this trend. You'll note on the overall activity report, one thing that stands out is there were 7 assaults reported during a 30-day period as opposed to 1 assault reported in February. I looked up those reported incidents and I just want to touch on it a little bit just to show that there's no trend going on. This is kind of what we just happened to see through this month. So on the 5th of March, at Walmart, a patron was reported to have been shoved. There were no charges, but it was coded as an assault. On 3/8, there was a domestic disturbance and there was an arrest for DV harassment. On the 8th, another phone contact at Walmart for a report that a known subject had spit on them, and that case was referred for potential prosecution. Also on the 8th, there was a reported assault in the Buffalo Wild Wings parking lot, which stemmed from a non-injury crash. The deputies were unable to determine if there had been an assault, but the crash was resolved with an information exchange. Nobody was injured to the point where they had to go to the hospital. On the 17th, someone reported somebody called and reported that somebody had just beat them up and then hung up, and that person was not able to be located, but it was still coded as an assault. On the 18th, 2 persons were reported to be fighting at a stoplight, and that was coded as an assault. That was actually a citizen confronting a DUI driver who was subsequently arrested. And then the big one I want to talk about is on the 30th, there was a domestic violence incident reported on Cedar. The subject fled the scene and returned the following day where he barricaded in the attic of the residence. This prompted a pretty large police response, as I'm sure you're all probably aware of. The subject eventually surrendered and was taken into custody. Numerous firearms were seized from the residence, and the charges for the subject were assault 2, felony strangulation, 2 counts of felon in possession of body armor, 16 counts of felon in possession of a firearm, forgery 1, and identity theft. And I'm sorry, criminal possession of a forged instrument and coercion. I just want to note on this that this was a very thorough investigation that was completed by our patrol level deputies. And oftentimes in other jurisdictions, this would be a detective level investigation. And I just think it really speaks to the experience of our law enforcement deputies that we have in the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And finally, we're looking forward to the first annual Wood Village Easter Egg Extravaganza. We'll be there with some nifty gifties to hand out and interact. So. And with that, if there's any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, back to your report. Who investigated it, Chief? You had it, you investigated it in-house, or I mean, your own detectives. But
No, it was our patrol deputies. That entire incident was investigated, initiated by our patrol level personnel.
By patrol.
Yeah.
That's pretty extensive investigation by patrol.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We have some very skilled deputies.
That frees up detectives for some other work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The traffic stops, I see those are up 100 to 133 and the average has been 90. Maybe, you know, there is a correlation between how much patrol gets done and how many accidents there are.
And maybe so. We're going to keep at it.
Okay. And the other question I have is we've been seeing an increased, I'm using we collectively here, but on Wood Village Boulevard, because we, and this we is my wife and I and our dog, we walk it every day, almost every day. And I'm seeing more graffiti, and I'm seeing graffiti that is separate styles. And, you know, if, back in the days when I was more watching that graffiti and what it means, there was a way, you know, police were interested in having it to see if there's another gang member coming into an area. And if we, you know, competing gangsters. So I don't know whether you still have a gang task force or if that also has been, you know, shared. But it's a question about the increased graffiti, and it's a question is, are those graffitis? Do you want pictures of them? Is it helping? I take pictures every time I see them, but we had a pretty extensive painting up there this last couple of weeks. So anything that we can do to help you, if you, I mean, graffiti's everywhere.
Right.
But the last thing we want is start to look like our neighbors west of us.
West.
Yeah,
Real
thank you for the question. I would say that we always encourage reports of vandalism and any other crime. And that can be a simple online report. It doesn't necessarily have to be a, you know, call for service that's initiated through BOEC. And that's more for tracking purposes than anything else, especially if there does become a pronounced problem. So, I mean, we always encourage reporting of crimes whenever possible. And those pictures can be uploaded to the online reporting dashboard if that's a route chosen. As far as your initial question with the gang enforcement team, we have entered a partnership with Ceasefire in East County, primarily with Gresham. Portland's also doing the Ceasefire model. Our investigation side pairs up with them more, but our East County side is us and Gresham PD primarily. This is a newer initiative, but we're really excited about it. And we've really had some strong headway in coordinating with them on missions that we're going to go for, toward targeted missions for identified problems, trying to get guns off the street, basically. So I think that's probably the closest iteration we have at this time. But I think it's going to be very successful. So we're really excited about it.
We'll keep sending pictures to you, and I'll make sure I send some that I don't send to the district, to down here to the city hall, but they get them too. So
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions, comments?
That's just a non-emergency number though.
I'm sorry?
That's just to report any vandalisms as a non-emergency number.
Yeah, the non-emergency number or online reporting.
Oh, on the
And we have both on our website, direct links to it under our public safety tab.
Thank you,
All right.
Chief. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
everything
thank you,
you
Mayor.
do.
Counselors, good to see everyone.
Is the chief coming in the Easter Bunny outfit?
Might have
Will he
to.
scare too many kids?
Might have to, because one of his deputies' daughter was going to be the bunny liaison, we'll call it.
Oh, okay.
And they backed out. So I'm kind of looking at you.
I don't know. You can,
I have to fill that in.
maybe he can fit into it.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to review of bills paid. Any question on those? No question on the bills paid, then we'll move to consent calendar.
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we'll go on to discussion of Comcast franchise agreement.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Give me a minute to share the screen here. I have a very robust and invigorating presentation, not as robust as your packet if you read all of that, but hopefully I go over the highlights here and understand what it is that will come for you your next meeting. So it's important to know that tonight you're not voting on anything. This is just background on what turned out to be a very long process, and how do I frame it? There's just a lot of comments from related parties to a cable franchise agreement. So I'm going to do a quick background of the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission, to which we are part. Quickly walk through the Comcast renewal process, some of the main themes or comments that were received as part of that outcome and recommendation, which we'll talk about there. And then did reserve some time if those from Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission were here. They're not here presently. We do have a representative from Comcast. They can say it in their own words, and then certainly your own discussion, questions, etc. So MHCRC was formed in the early 90s by the area cities, so the 4 cities plus Portland plus unincorporated Multnomah County, to handle predominantly cable franchise agreements. If you remember way back in the early 90s, I barely do, but that was, cable was becoming this big new thing, and what to do with, how to handle that, franchise it, public benefits, etc. It wasn't uncommon to form kind of coalitions. So there's one in Clark County, Washington County, Clackamas County, and we have ours in the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission. And we've done this through an IIGA for several years. They get funding partially through cable franchise revenues, and they're staffed by currently the City of Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability Community Technology Team. So that's kind of in a nutshell who they are. Now, what did they do? So obviously they negotiate and handle and manage franchise agreements, especially in the earlier days. It was very important for customer service standards. So they'd monitor and track those, track customer concerns and complaints. Another large part, especially of their board, was to manage and oversee the community grants that were part of, again, a separate franchise fee component to cable revenues, and again, that public benefit side of that. They're also, they advocate regionally, nationally, and just regulate overall cable industry. So what is a franchise agreement? Basically, it's the agreement to which agencies can use the right of way. We have several ourselves: PGE, Northwest Natural, Telecom, etc. What we've learned, cable, though, is a bit different than all those, a lot more complex, and has over the years developed a lot more public benefits that the MHCRC helps to regulate. Historically, our franchise agreements have been for 10-year periods, whether that was with Comcast, Frontier / Ziply, and again, includes those customer service standards, reporting, the public benefit side of it, and other components as negotiated by the parties. What I do understand is that the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission was very instrumental in the early days of cable, of building up those public benefits, and that's kind of unique to cable franchise agreements throughout the country. So let's talk about the cable franchise renewal process, this time with Comcast. So a lot of these are regulated. We have state law, federal law, FCC regulations, the partner jurisdictions, also the provider. So a lot of parties and regulations in that space. This process started in 2020. That's when it started, but between COVID, staffing changes, other components, it really kind of fell off to the wayside. Last 18, 24 months, that really did pick back up, though, and more robust discussions with Comcast, the MHCRC. The MHCRC The MHCRC released essentially a finalized draft, and that was more for public comment, agency comment, et cetera, in November. That went until January, when then it was voted on by the respective board, which Wood Village has a representative. For the first time, it was actually a split vote. It wasn't unanimous. It was a 4-2 vote with the Wood Village and Fairview representatives voting no. We'll get a little bit of that details a little later on. But it still falls on each jurisdiction to then actually approve the franchise agreement. So the MHRC is a recommending body. So what each city then is able to do a different vote if it so chooses. However, if it chooses to do something different than was recommended, it's essentially the city's liability or duty to then negotiate that with the provider. So let's just say we don't like it, we want to negotiate with Comcast ourselves, that falls wholly on us, good, bad, or otherwise. So the key points of the current negotiation, say really three things. One, it recognized that the INET no longer exists. That was an institutional network, intergovernmental network. It was, I won't say disbanded, but it no longer exists. So that was removed from the language. There's also the FCC Order 621, and that was the bulk of the comments received. This was originally, it was a 2019 FCC ruling that then was appealed. Actually, I think City of Eugene was a party to that, and obviously a lot of other cities. I think it was settled in 2021 or 2022. The short version is cable franchise providers can recover marginal costs for providing certain public benefits, such as the channel allotment, the maintenance of that specific portion of the network or cable infrastructure, the programming guide. Basically, it's the marginal cost for the public broadcasting of the public benefits in a very short order. The FCC order is actually quite long and extensive. That's the gist of it. The other big thing was the PEG fees. That's the public education and government fee. It had been 1.25, so the fee itself had been 3%, partial to PEG, partial to INET. INET going away, it was what to do with PEG, especially on declining cable revenues, which is from declining cable subscribership. It settled down at 2.5%. So you think, oh, going from 1.25 to 2.5, that's a win. It's also, you could look at going from 3 to 2.5 on declining revenues. And that's some of the comments we received regarding that. Plus then looking at what those marginal costs might be if so choosing to be charged. So that's the other piece. The FCC order says that cable providers, can recover them. That doesn't mean that they actually will ask to cover them. And those costs come out of essentially the public benefit, the franchise fees, the PEG fees. And there was a bunch of other updates in there. I'm glad our main rep, Andrew Spear, is here. He can talk about those in more detail if you're interested, but those seem to be the largest provisions that had the most impact to the affected parties. So, as I said, there was public input, really held kind of that October time through January when the MHRC board made its vote. Again, the common themes were the PEG fees, and then it was felt by some that how the MHRC crafted the FCC order went above and beyond what the law was. I'm not a lawyer. I am certainly not a cable franchise lawyer. What I do know is the MHRC hired a very well-respected, qualified legal firm to handle a lot of the legal stuff, and it was found, in compliance with federal law. Are they overreaching? Do they mirror it? I'm not exactly qualified to say, but when a law firm says this is good, they're the experts, I'm not. Not saying that still doesn't have impacts to the affected parties, though. We already covered this, essentially. This is about the MHRC's response, essentially. They followed the law, the Order 621. PEG fees have issues regardless. And in fact, bumping it from 1.25 to 2.5, hopefully at least buys some time to those community media centers to reevaluate, reinvent themselves. So we have Metro East for kind of the east side of the county, then City of Portland has Open Signal, I believe is what it's called. So again, those are split between the subscribers in those jurisdictions. So again, the MHRC recommendation was a 4-2 vote. So the Wood Village representative voted no. I don't want to say it was fully ceremoniously a no vote. I think the mayor and I talked with our representative, that's Scott Harden, who just, stated why he voted no. It was kind of a commentary on the process overall. I think we'll just call it wasn't optimal, both in duration of the time it took, and I think all parties could agree upon that, as well as, the overall involvement from underlying partners. Looking back, these will come up every 10 years, so they're not very common. Looking back at the last one, there seemed to be more trading back of the issues and the main points between the cities, the partners, MHCRC. It's also quite possible because it sat for so long due to COVID, staffing changes, things at the MHCRC that once it got negotiating, it'd been a couple years already. So I think we just leave it. It wasn't optimal. The other side of that no vote was more, again, just kind of the commentary on corporate communityism and the lack thereof in general, not just blasting Comcast or saying Comcast, you should give more to the communities in which you're housed, but it was more of a corporation seemed to be more shareholder value focused and not necessarily community focused like they had been over decades ago. So again, I think it was more ceremoniously a no vote for those reasons. And the rep did say, yeah, the city ought to probably adopt it. They really don't have other good options and alternatives. City of Gresham did adopt it at their meeting. I think it was last week. It was certainly, I think, at their last meeting with a unanimous vote. So what's before you tonight, I kind of laid it all out because it is a big deal, a big process, comes up only every 10 years or so. So we do have representatives from Cable Regulatory Commission to maybe expand in their own words the process, the difficulties, and the outcome. We do have Tim Goodman here, the government affairs rep from Comcast, to again say it from his words, his perspectives. Metro East did provide written comments. I believe they were emailed to you and printed out in front of you. Tried to summarize those and those essentially the common themes. So certainly have some time for those individuals to talk about this process in their words. I wasn't in the space. And when you look at next steps, we have the vote scheduled for April 22nd. So not tonight. This is time for you to gather information, have comments, etc. And regardless of that vote, I still think there's two big things that we'll need to keep in mind. So voting on the franchise doesn't end this part, which is what is that future of the Mountain Cable Regulatory Commission? There was a meeting, I believe it was November time, where that was a big topic of all the partner jurisdictions, is what to do with the MHCRC given declining revenues, but also declining cable subscribership. And the institution that it was set up for is lesser needed. Metro East, again, a wonderful organization entity set up in the heyday of cable franchise revenues and providing cable entertainment. What does that look like for its future? What role do we have in helping that process? Certainly they do more than have a really cool studio, I might add. But when you look at, content creation, a lot of it's more digital. People have, phones, GoPros. You're not necessarily doing it in a studio. So how can we be part of that transition process, both in terms of what they are, as well as like how is that funded? If they so choose to do a process, if they so choose to invite us, what do you want that role to be? So kind of regardless of the Comcast agreement, these two things also need to be talked about. Not tonight, certainly not on the 22nd, but I just want to mention it. These are two important things that will come up over time that we should at least try to get our head around it. So I'm going to go back to here to invite at least Andrew Spear to see if he has any words.
Greg, do you mind just ensuring that we can see Counselor Clark in case he has any questions or anything?
There we go.
There we go.
No, thank you, Mayor. I'm fine.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrew Spear. I work for the City of Portland and staff. The commission worked to negotiate the franchise agreement and do cable compliance on the franchise agreement as well. I think Greg covered the contents. I think from my perspective, what's happened over the last 15 to 20 years is just a continued slide of cable subscribers. And so, as Greg was alluding to, the world of cable is no longer the same. And so therefore the revenues are no longer the same. So therefore the leverages that jurisdictions have are no longer the same. When we think about what we can ask for and negotiate within the context of a contract. And so the commission was really focused on when I came to this in 2023 was ensuring that the decrease of PEG percentage was as minimal as it could be. And so that was kind of my marching orders, so to speak. And then, as we went through the process, some of the things that were included as part of Order 621 were felt by the community media centers to be overreaching, as Greg alluded to in the process. But I just want to note for you, under the current agreement that Comcast operates under today, they can exercise those 621 order outcomes right now, and they have not. So we have some experience in this space of Comcast not exercising those marginal costs passed through to either the community media centers or the jurisdictions themselves. So I think that's one data point for us to consider and think about. And then also just the PEG is a really high PEG percentage in terms of the whole West, starting from the Midwest, west of there. We have the highest or equal to the highest. I think there's one other jurisdiction that's at the same level that this agreement is being brought to you for at 2.5%. So we have a really good agreement from a revenue and cost recovery standpoint on PEG and how that PEG dollars make it to the community media centers for their PEG capital expenditures. And so I just want to note those things because I think they're important within the discussions and the comments that were given to you by the community media centers. I understand their fear, but they operate in a nonprofit model like Greg was explaining. So they have the ability, unlike us as government institutions, right, to pivot and go a different direction when they need to quicker than we can. And I think it's important for us as cities, right, because I'm part of this with my City of Portland hat on, of looking at what our PEG needs are as a government, right? How do we need PEG to function into the future, and how are the community media centers meeting us for those needs? So I think those are all discussions that we as jurisdictions need to have going forward. But I think the questions that came out of Gresham were a lot of curiosity of why. A lot of it goes back to the why of Order 621. There's a lot of narrative there you could go down, but the outcome of that order, I don't know that was super helpful for municipalities and jurisdictions, cities, but it's where we are. So we're complying with that when we move forward and think about this agreement.
Any questions from council?
I get it does sound like the negotiations went probably pretty good, given any leverage to lose 0.5% in the negotiations at the table. I see that in the 621, and I saw this earlier, that the cap would be 5%. They have a 5% cap on that. Is that correct? They could, if they implement, go as high as 5% on those marginal costs. Is that what that means?
It comes out of the 5% franchise fee. So it wouldn't exceed that. So if the city gets X and Comcast so chooses to define what the marginal costs are, et cetera, put it all together and start charging it, it can't exceed the revenues generated.
Okay. Yeah. And appreciate the point that they haven't passed it on yet, and maybe they never will. Do you know any other places that they have passed that on, or do you know that?
Yeah, I'm not aware.
Okay.
So in talking with Tim, who can say it in his own words here in a few minutes, when I sat down with him, some jurisdictions pay for the digital menu, the digital guide. That I believe is in your staff report. It works out to about $4,000 or $5,000 a year, split between the underlying jurisdictions in which that's formed. But Comcast itself has not developed what the marginal cost would be for both the providing channels, the maintenance of infrastructure. Our infrastructure is the same as the neighborhood. So when it goes to Metro East, it's the same line that's serving that area. So to find that marginal cost I'm going to say is difficult, but I'll let Tim say it in his own words shortly.
Yeah. And again, just to, Greg, the revenue to Wood Village is 4,000.
It's pretty minimal after you look at, I'll call it the split, you know, how the Metro East piece, the MHCRC piece, then the city's piece, and then you're looking at then declining revenues because that's total cable revenues. And the later agenda item is Ziply pulling out of its cable franchise because it no longer has any subscribers. So it's a declining revenue for the city. Really, the revenues go towards, again, the community media center and cable regulatory is where the rubber hits the road on that one.
So that's really a discussion that would take place later because there's, I mean, what we're doing right now with this is Mount Hood.
This is Comcast cable franchise negotiation, what we're talking about.
No.
But yeah,
I get that.
later we'll need
But
to,
out of that
Yeah.
is also the discussion of what to do with the revenue that we do get here.
not so much the
remaining.
revenue, but what is the future of MHCRC? Because it's asked that question. So I'm not just saying, oh, we should get rid of them. They've started asking that question in light of declining cable revenues and subscribers, as well as the future role of Metro East in the world of digital media creation and the role it can play in that.
And that's what I'm trying to remember that presentation they gave us.
Yeah.
And that was it, that our benefits are from those two organizations.
Correct.
And we need to, have some further discussions on.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, because Metro East does more than just televise our meetings and our neighbors' meetings. They do a lot of outreach and education around technology.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, it's really complicated. What happens if we don't receive any more money from cable subscribers? What if they all go? Then what do we do to pay whoever we pay with it?
That's a great question.
Well,
and I think
you know.
it needs an answer before we get to that point. And I think
Exactly.
MHCRC and Metro East are looking at that. I don't think we have an answer yet or what that process looks like, but people are recognizing that.
Thank you.
And I think that the goal is to get a answer before we're forced to have an answer.
I think that leads to the part where Greg mentioned, this franchise agreement is one piece, but, let's not forget about this other piece that is associated with that as well. And so I do know that Fairview's representative, have had a conversation with his mayor and then kind of later, same as kind of ours said, this is the agreement and the city should go ahead and do what they need to do, what's best for them in that retrospect.
Well, just again, if I'm tracking this right, we have little to gain from not approving this. Because if we're going to be out there on our own,
There's a lot more.
that's probably not a very smart thing to do with the amount of money here that we're talking about.
That's, yeah, I agree. But also don't want to forget, our partners that are involved in this, again, in helping be part of a solution because they're great entities and done great work. And I think we just all want to know what that looks like in a world with less cable. And then do you want to hear from Mr. Goodman from Comcast at all? Or if you don't have any more information, we can wrap this up and we'll ready to bring it back at your next council meeting for adoption consideration.
Councilor Clark, any questions, comments?
No, I'm ready for it to just come back next council meeting. I think I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think you shared enough information and, we appreciate the
Try to condense 4 years of a heavy regulated industry into 13 slides. So I'm glad it worked.
Oh, yeah. Thank
Well, you've had
you all.
4 years to get ready for it.
Yeah. Thank you all for your good work in this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to presentation BOIC update.
Because we're just going to enter a realm that we're not.
You guys.
No.
So we're on a deserted island and then I would defend first. Also, I've never. There you go.
And can I,
Just use sit down.
okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to present actually some good news after years and years of really difficult news, certainly with the Bureau of Emergency Communications. For the record, I'm Bob Causey, Director of the Bureau of Emergency Communications, which is your 911 center. We provide service for 911 service for the entirety of Multnomah County, as well as public safety dispatch for all public safety entities within the county. Now, just looking back a little bit, I like to start in 2018 because that's what I would consider was kind of our last sort of normal year. And it's also the first year I was director at BOEC. So you could say everything before that was BC, before Causey. Everything after that is now what we're living through. But what's interesting here is that huge increase in 911 calls from 2020 to 2021. We remember what was going on in our community back then, how challenging things were, and it really shows up here. What I like to say often is that 911 is a barometer of the condition of a community. We see what's happening firsthand. Our dispatchers, our call takers are witnessing everything that's going on in our community. And when I say we're a barometer, we can tell you exactly what's going on. Back to this slide, good news, this past year did show about a 5% decrease in 911 calls, but in reality, still 35% increase since 2018. So staffing, it was really challenging during this time frame. Not only did we see a big increase in 911 calls, our staff really started burning out. We ended up losing about a third of our staff during that 1.5 to 2 year time frame following COVID and following all of the, or during all of the protests and riots that the city of Portland was experiencing. And because of that, we had record low staffing. Obviously, the community was very frustrated because 911 call answering times were really slow. And employees burned out, they left. Anyone who could retire did retire. And that pie chart really shows at the lowest point, February 1st of 2023, which really wasn't that long ago, we had 40 vacancies. So, we started figuring out how to dig out of the hole. And recently I was able to co-present with our training manager at a regional conference for 911 professionals on how Portland 911 dug out of the hole. And this is some of the information from that presentation because we really have really turned a corner at the Bureau of Emergency Communications. One thing that we did was lean into the negative media coverage. I don't know if you watched much news back then, but I was interviewed a lot and I was on the news a lot and was asked the very difficult questions. One question in particular that one local reporter asked was, these long 911 wait times, are they acceptable? And I remember feeling surprised by that question. And I looked at him and I said, absolutely not. And that actually caught him off guard a little bit because I don't know, I'm a bureaucrat. Maybe he thought I'd backpedal or offer some excuses. But no, I said, I'm part of this community. I have family in this community. Of course, it's not acceptable. And at that point, things started to shift. And because of that direct honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, The media became our champions, and they spread the word in a really positive way, sharing a negative story, but recognizing that we needed help. In addition to that, the city of Portland launched Portland Street Response, which is really gaining traction, certainly within the city of Portland. And through that process, yielded additional positions for the Bureau. We also introduced some technology to help alleviate the workload, the burden that our employees were feeling. One of those, it's called ASAP to PSAP. You probably don't care about the acronyms, but basically that is a technology that allows alarm companies to directly interface with our computer system so that they don't have to call. They don't have to call and use yet another phone line, keeping our staff busy. And through that technology, over half of the alarm companies that we work with are on the technology, and they can literally just type in their computer and it pops up on our dispatcher screen. AAC is the automated abandoned callback feature, and this is my public education moment. When folks call 911 accidentally, they oftentimes they'll just hang up. Well, I'd like to say don't hang up because we have to call you back. But the phone system using this technology does attempt a callback, automatically calling and asking the caller if they have an emergency to press 1. If they don't have an emergency, press 2, and that counts as a callback. A problem with the technology, and it does help alleviate some of the workload for the callbacks that we have to make. But part of the problem with the technology is that most people think it's a robocall and don't answer. So the system will call a second time, and if we don't get an answer that second time, then we have to call them back, ultimately. But it does save, between those two technologies, about 40 work hours per month, each technology. So that's basically, 1 FTE for half a month that we're saving. And we also implemented non-emergency phone triage. This is a couple years old now, but instead of having a phone tree, when you call non-emergency, folks were having to wait a really, really long time on non-emergency in particular. During the peak of our call volume, it was not unheard of to have people waiting for an hour or more just for a non-emergency answer. So we implemented this technology, and it uses a more sophisticated AI type tool that really it's still a phone tree, but it provides service, provides referral information, and it will automatically transfer folks to 311 if that's appropriate. It also will send them web reporting information when that's appropriate. And that, believe it or not, has alleviated about 1/3 of our non-emergency call volume. And of course, the city of Portland expanded the 311 program, which helped ease our workload as well. So we put in a lot of work to grow staff. Before all of this difficulty happened, we would normally have 2 training academies a year, but we were never able to get to a place where we were completely full, except one time since I've been there. And that was around 2019 timeframe, before everything really got difficult. Since then, we have implemented 4 academies per year, oftentimes back to back, with really only a weekend between when academy will graduate and when the next one will be onboarded. We have an academy right now of 9 people that we're running. And through this course, the past couple of years, we've hired 106 people with about a 74% retention. So they're sticking around. That's good news. We also have prioritized training and daily staffing. During the peak of our increase in 911 calls, we thought it would be temporary. We didn't realize that it would be an ongoing problem. So we ended up canceling much of our training for those trainees who are in police dispatch training. They're already certified as call takers. So we would take them out of police dispatch training and have them answering phones, thinking this will last a week, maybe 2 weeks, but it didn't. it lasted a long time and kept going. So ultimately, we had to figure out that in order to reach where we need to be, we have to prioritize training. So we made the difficult decision to pull those trainees back out of 911 call answering, which of course impacted call answering times, but focused on getting them certified. And through that process, also recognized the coaches. We paid more of a premium, a higher percentage of a premium for coaches so that we could recognize the existing coaches as well as hopefully onboard some new coaches. And we were able to, because when you do the math with 40 vacancies, it's not unheard of for our agency to have 30 or 40 trainees at any given time. That's not very common in this profession, but we were able to onboard a huge number of trainees and start the training process for them as well. Some of the recruitment strategies, I mentioned all of the negative media, but we rode that wave and we didn't shirk away from it. We just pushed into it. And we also partnered with public information officers for all of our partner agencies to get the word out when we're recruiting, which was pretty much all the time. All of our outreach, even if it were for community fairs or things like that, we treated everything as a recruitment opportunity and brought recruiting materials and planted seeds of recruitment everywhere we went. We also encouraged our employees. In fact, our employees who made it through all of that, that historic time for our Bureau, they're our best advocates. They lived through it. They know what it's like. And we've had a number of employees bring their friends or family in some cases to our Bureau, and they're successful employees now. We also really looked at our inclusive hiring and how we were unintentionally leaving people out. And we took an equity lens to our hiring process and asked a fundamental question: who are we leaving out? And we made a concerted effort to reach out to specific communities that we felt were not being included for one reason or another. I also wanted to point out that picture there is an actual electronic billboard picture. So when you're driving through Portland and you're waiting at a traffic light, busy intersection, you can look up and see that a couple of years ago and know that it was the truth. Because at that moment in time, I can promise you, calls were holding. And through all of those efforts, we actually had really stellar and record-setting recruitments. We also expanded how people can find us, and that's the real QR code right there that somebody can take a picture of and link to our recruitment on our website. So as far as recruiting, I mentioned earlier, we kind of shifted gears in how we were focusing on the folks that we were trying to recruit. Normally in this profession, I think in every profession, everyone wants that unicorn, that person who's going to be perfect for the job, who's got experience, who can step right in, get trained up really quickly and succeed. And we recognize, you know what, we really shouldn't be looking for the unicorn. What we need to be looking for are solid people with high emotional intelligence, because we're dealing with people on the worst day of their lives. People who are calling 911 are calling because they have a problem. And because of that, we recognized, you know, we're not going to get someone who's already a dispatcher. We're going to get somebody who wants to be. If they're willing to be trained, if they're willing to put in the work, we're willing to bring them on board. And really, through that focus mostly on emotional intelligence, bringing in those smart, stable people, we've had a lot of success with that model. We also recognize that there's a lot of different professions out there that seem to intersect pretty well with 911. You would be amazed at the multitasking ability of someone who works at Taco Bell, someone who works as a barista, even someone who drives for Amazon. And it's astonishing to see the talent and the skill that they can bring in and how it translates somehow or another. Now, granted, our training program is pretty long. It takes about 1.5 years minimum to get fully certified. But within 6 months, they're answering phones, typically on their own. We also recognize that last point there, that sometimes we would bring interested candidates onto the ops floor a little too soon, and it would scare them. So rather than doing that up front and scare them away, we decided to provide all the information we possibly can through not only through their initial interview, but through subsequent meetings where they can just have Q&A time with some of our staff. And then as they're going through the process, we bring them in a little bit later to kind of ease them into the profession. Because it can be really intimidating if you walk onto the ops floor and see everyone working at such a high level. So this, point in time, really, when we're looking at staffing on the far left, July of 2022, relatively small amount of dark purple, high light blue. So that dark purple is the fully certified senior dispatchers. They've gone all the way through training. They know 911, they know police dispatch, and they know fire dispatch. Then looking to the right, that's the projection, and that's a realistic projection of where we are going to be January of 2027. Now that's just a couple of years from now. Right now, though, we are on the verge of having every single position filled. So this is kind of a snapshot of 911 call answering times. The spaghetti on the wall that you're looking at here, pay attention to the red line because that's the average 911 wait times. So back in 2018, we averaged 22 seconds. In 2019, even with an increase in 911 calls, we were able to absorb it and we were down to 12-second average. Honestly, that's where I'd like us to be, that or below. Because my expectation is on my worst day, I want someone picking up right away. I don't want to wait. 10 seconds is about 3 rings. When you're panicking, 3 rings sounds like an eternity. So I'd like it to be faster than that. But you can see then 2020, it went up, 2021, 2022 averaged 65 seconds, over a minute for us to answer 911 calls. It wasn't because our staff wasn't trying, they were working very hard. But we started implementing the things that I just described and it started improving. 2023 was 51 seconds. 2024 averaged 43 seconds, but honestly, that's for the whole year because we started seeing some really significant improvement by the end of the year. And so look at us now. You can see 40 vacancies in that left side. And as of March 1st, so 2 years and 1 month later, we had 4 vacancies. Speaking to that 4 vacancies, excuse me, I'm getting over bronchitis. Those 4 vacancies really are limited term positions, actually. Every single one of our permanently funded positions are full right now. So this is year to date, looking at the first basically a little over 3 months of each year by comparison. In 2020, it was 11 seconds. 2021, 30 seconds. And you can see now in 2025, we've gone through that whole peak of 60 seconds, and now we're averaging right now at 24 seconds. And I know non-emergency is still an issue for some folks, or certainly on everyone's minds, even though in 2022 it says we averaged 14 minutes and 44 seconds. I know it was longer for a lot of people. For every phone that we answered, for every phone that we answered within 20 seconds, there were those that were an hour. So it obviously averaged out to 1444 back in 2022. But now, so far this year, we're down to about 3.5 minutes. And last week was actually closer to 2.5 minutes. And that's my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Questions or comments?
What's the average wait time if across the country that that emergency dispatches shoot for or would like to be at?
Yeah. So the national standard, there's a 20-second mark and a 15-second mark. Unfortunately, most larger 911 centers aren't able to meet that, especially post-COVID. A lot of my counterparts across the country are struggling with that marker in particular. But the goal is to answer 90% of 911 calls within 20 seconds. And, I mentioned earlier that is the national standard. That's not mine. I'd like to see it well below 10 seconds.
I really wanted to be a 911 dispatcher. I took the PCC course.
Okay, yeah.
I applied to about 50 different places from the coast to the desert. I was told at the coast that I sounded overly confident. And I thought that was a pretty lame excuse. I think it was because of my age, actually. But that was, 25, 30 years ago. So you couldn't fault them. But I really wanted to do
You're
that.
only 12 then.
Yeah, I was a prodigy. But yeah, it was an interesting, I took the tour, I used the radio and the machines and everything, and it was exciting, but didn't get to do it.
Well, it's our loss.
I have to say, the recruitment efforts paid off, right? And so in 2 years to see what the results of those efforts are, do you foresee, that's 2 years to be at the 42nd mark, is that correct? For answering, for call answer?
So last year this time of year last year, we were averaging 40 seconds.
Okay, so then moving forward by 2027, that should be the call average.
You know what, we are going, 911
Right there.
calls are beginning to go down. You can see last year, they went down about 5%. We're seeing that same trend this year in terms of 911 call volume. So that's the number of 911 calls that we take. But then when you look at the, average call answering times, because we have so many trainees in the pipeline right now, that 24 seconds by this time next year, I would hope would be about half that. So I think the 911 call volume probably will continue to go down, but also the call answering times will continue to go down. So it'll be less wait time for a caller.
Okay, that's great.
So Bob, I'm Counselor Clark and I'm at home. The 2022 60 second wait time, nationally, we had heard that the majority of calls that were coming in were domestic violence calls. Was that pretty much the kind of calls that you were receiving in 2022 as well here in Portland or in Multnomah County?
Most likely not. What we were beginning to experience then was civil unrest, kind of the tail end of all of that. And then the increase in homeless-related calls for service, emergencies related to homelessness, like tent fires, fights, those types of things. In addition to civil unrest, that's when we really saw an uptick of like the street takeover issues that we've seen. A lot of those, anytime there was a You can imagine, everyone has a cell phone now. And anytime someone's driving down the freeway, and if there happens to be something on fire, we'll get a spike in calls, 20, 30 calls. And when somebody, when that many people are calling, ultimately that's going to busy out our system. People will then hang up and we have to call them back. So that just creates more of that additional workload. So, domestic violence, I think probably, and I'm just speaking anecdotally, I think during COVID in particular, when everyone was stuck at home, we did see an increase in domestic violence types of calls, family violence types of calls. But in general, what we saw was just more crime, more of the nonsense that happens out there.
So a follow-up observation here is I serve on the Citizen Noise Advisory Committee out at the Portland International Airport, and we went where people can report noise, I'll call it noise complaints automatically now, and we knew what would happen is there would be a huge spike in the number of complaints that we would receive when they would do this online, and we figured it would double, possibly even triple in the number of calls, or where people would be able to fill it out online. And this was very true when it happened. And then what happened is that 90% of those complaints came in by one or two people. So we would have as many as 3,000 or 4,000 complaints by one person each month. So is that something that you also get out of the calls that you receive?
We do have a set of folks in our community who are, pardon me again, who are frequent callers. Most of the time, those folks, though, are usually dealing with some kind of mental health issue, not necessarily a crisis, but they do feel that they need to call multiple times. And we sometimes get dozens and dozens of calls from the same individual. We're working with Multnomah County Behavioral Health to address those callers in particular, as well as appropriate agencies, so that we can try to get them the help that they need and alleviate the burden that our staff is faced with.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
My question is, have you seen any, like you're mentioning the decrease in 911 calls and averages. Have you seen any increase in non-emergency calls like that shift over?
No, what we did see when non-emergency calls were waiting for so long, people would get tired of waiting, hang up and call 911. So it increased our 911 call volume and frustrated them because we'd tell them they had to hang up and call back on non-emergency. It was a horrible cycle. Because of the non-emergency triage system that we put in place, our non-emergency calls have actually gone down by about a third. And those calls, they're not just going away. The system is just giving the caller the information they need, and they don't necessarily need to talk to a call taker to get that.
Any information on, because of the high wait times, that folks just stop calling just overall because of their past experiences?
Where people lose faith
Yeah.
in the system.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't know it by looking at the numbers. But anecdotally, I have heard people say that they're frustrated and they're just not going to call. I don't know what to say to that because it's really difficult to measure.
Any questions from staff?
I just had a comment. Bob mentioned that he came out for a good news story. We don't always get good news stories from our valued regional partners. And I wanted to just point out that Bob's approach to tackling a very significant problem in a time of crisis was refreshing. We don't always see people owning the problems that are in front of them. Usually the reporter's response was kind of shock of, you're not just going to tell me this isn't a real problem and it's all in my head. And I think that that's been a credit. And I think we were very lucky to have Bob and the team that we had at the 911 center that responded the way they did.
Thank you, Seth.
Well, and I just piggyback that a little bit. You said you're out training in other states now. California,
we
have
were
been
able-
invited to.
We were able to provide 2 sessions at the APCO, which is the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, Western Regional Conference, which we happened to host here in Portland, so it was very convenient. But it really is the western half of the United States send some of their dispatchers, management team, or whoever to this regional conference. And our training manager and I were able to offer this.
Well, that also builds pride in your organization with your employees too, when that happens. Your distinction between hiring a potential dispatcher
Mhm.
and how you distinguish that is, I think certainly wise is hire talent and train them.
Yeah. We have a great training program. We might as well.
Yeah. So, well, again, I'm really happy with this report. When I know that, last year and the year before, I mean, you were fighting hard to stay above water.
We sure were.
Well, thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks for being here.
All right, we'll move on to presentation of the Ziply or Resolution 8-2025.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Going back to our theme of declining cable subscribership. Close that. Sure that we can see Councilor Clark there. Okay, so this is Resolution 8-2025, terminating the Ziply cable franchise agreement. So a bit of background. So prior to Verizon coming on board in 2009, there was what's called the Legacy Telecommunications Agreement with GTE. Verizon took that over, but expanded it with broadband and cable services in 2009, all done through the MHCRC. That transferred to Frontier Communications in 2010. That was then, we call it renewed in 2018, but then transferred to Northwest Fiber, otherwise known as Ziply, in 2019. If you remember from those that were here, in 2022, Ziply applied for and essentially revived its legacy telecommunications agreement. And why I keep saying legacy is the state, and if Jeff were here, he'd probably talk a couple hours about it, but the state and all of its laws and codes and what have you, there's very strict not requirements, but franchise components to legacy telecommunications providers in terms of what you can and can't charge in terms of franchise fees and other benefits. So because they're the legacy provider, they get a special bucket of you only pay so much. It is what it is, kind of like the FCC and everything else. We don't have any say in that. So Ziply has had now both a telecom agreement and their cable franchise agreement. Well, in November of this past year, Ziply asked the city to terminate the cable franchise agreement due to they no longer had any cable subscribers in the city. Now, due to our relationship with MHCRC, or our part of being part of the MHCRC, it wasn't just as simple as, okay, cancel it. There's actually a process in which cable franchisees have to go through to terminate their agreements early. So Ziply and MHCRC worked through that to develop an unwinding, if you would, of the different benefits, the components, et cetera. And that's to be effective January 1st, 2026 for all jurisdictions. So the 4 cities, Portland, Multnomah County, everyone is gone January 1st, whether there's still subscribers or not. There's just different notice requirements if there are subscribers still within that jurisdiction. We don't have any, so there is no notice requirement. We can process this now. This seemed like an opportune time, just given they requested it in November. MHCRC just went through the process, was wrapped up about a month ago. So we thought, great, talk about Comcast, cancel Ziply. That's pretty much the gist of it. So Ziply is still in our community. They're still providing broadband services, but it's broadband services, no longer cable services. Questions?
Questions, comments by council? I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 8-2025, terminating the Ziply Fiber Cable Franchise Agreement effective January 1st, 2026.
I'll second that.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries.
Thank you very much.
And I know Counselor Minor has asked for some quick minute after the meeting here, so.
Yeah, and I can do it after we adjourn. I'll do it right now. I'm working on the Mount Hood bond campaign, and we've had a couple of presentations here. And my duty is to get lawn signs out. And also these signs right here that I've shared, if we can get them in windows and business windows is kind of the idea. And businesses that you could, they just, I see them around, I see them over in Gresham, they're just taped up to the window. Homes too. But that's the idea, to get out signs. So I'm here and I have 5 signs over here, lawn signs. And if you go by my house, I got 1, 2, and I'm working. By the way, I did contact the Grand Ron just to get permission to put some there. And I know we have an easement there anyway, but so anyway, what we can do, I have more. Get them spread out. If you can put one in your yard and you got a neighbor down the street, and think of way as intersections where you're going to pick up people going different directions. Somebody put one on the intersection of Wood Village Boulevard and Arata Road.
Who did that?
I'm looking for them. I don't want.
John, can you hold that sign up where I can see
Like
it?
the other ones that he put up.
Yeah, anyway, and so Mark, I'll be happy to bring by a couple signs, Mark, because my thinking is, let's make sure we can get the upper village, get maybe Tree Hill, and Pat, I'll leave it up to you with your homeowners association.
Oh, I don't live there anymore.
Well, you don't? Well, I'll get a hold of Scott, and it'd be great to have one right there in the front. But
Yes.
that's the
That'll
idea.
do
Just
it.
think about where most strategically we can put those. I have I pulled off a little sheet from the bond campaign. And Greg, if you can't do
I
that.
can't.
Never mind. I had to do it myself. But I'll give every one of you, and you can make a copy. Actually, you know what? You guys, you can look on the bond channel too. You got yours. But anyway, let's try to get that bond passed. And let's talk, let's talk to neighbors. I got a couple of people already in Fairview that are gonna put out some signs. So I want to run out of signs, and I want to be able to go tell them I need 25 more. So anyway, there's my pitch. And I know we all know the value of Mount Hood Community College and how it serves our families out here, and how it is an economic driver in our community. And it's been 50 years. So if you need any help from me beyond my little pitch here tonight, you make sure you call me. So I'll be available.
I sent you a text. I'll be home Thursday.
Thursday, okay, Mark, if you're there, or if you're not, I'll put it on your porch.
We'll put it on your lawn.
Well, I'll put it on all your neighbors' lawns. No, do you want to, Mark,
His bush.
two signs, Mark? Can you get a neighbor?
I have lots of traffic that goes by my house. Yeah, 2 signs will
You're
work.
gonna need both of them.
Okay, all right,
Thanks. But I'll be home Thursday.
okay.
Okay.
With the
Good to see ya.
council, endorsing the bond, what restrictions, I guess, does the city play? Could we put a message on the reader board?
Probably not the reader board,
reader
but I'll defer to Jeff.
Any?
Council is exempt from that. rule.
Sure,
That's
sure.
under shutdown. But
Perfect.
won't do anything.
Good to know that at least.
Yeah, and that's why I knew that I had to print these. So, you know, you only get.
I couldn't hear a thing what Jeff said. His microphone must have turned off.
I'm sorry, Councilman. Fiendish plot to silence the lawyer over there. No, the city can't take, the city or the city staff can't take any active role in any campaign activity. So we can't, you can't post the signs outside or use the reader board or use any staff members or city facilities to print them. Council is exempt from that rule. You're able to do that, which is why you could endorse, but not staff, not the city, not city facilities or city money.
Perfect.
And really quick, before everyone goes, one reminder, we do have a city council meeting tomorrow, 6 o'clock here at City Hall. I will email out also a Zoom link for those who may not be able to attend in person. I know there'll be a couple people from the other two cities attending remotely. We, little bit for a quick of run a show, we'll do a little bit of background financially of this is the issue. I know you all are well versed in that with a lot of the work, but some of our other neighbors, doesn't hurt to bring it up. So that might be a little more review for everyone. We'll then go over what other cities have done in similar situations. Choctaw will take lead on that for a brief time, but then it's really, we'll go over the proposals. And, certainly we'll discuss them, review them, and then allow the councils to ask questions, but ultimately come out with a direction for how we want to go. So I'll be tomorrow, 6 o'clock here. We then have budget committee a week from today, also here, 5:45, and then Easter extravaganza on the 19th. So it's a busy little period for everyone, but certainly happy to help keep track of calendars or meeting invites or whatever you all need.
So Greg, I'll be in chemotherapy 12 hours tomorrow. So if I'm on it, I'll be on there starting, it'll be at the late time of about 1 hour left. And then I'll be joining you in the passenger seat of the car on the way home. Okay?
Okay. I mean, attend as much as you're want and able. We can certainly brief you later on the discussions and things if you're just not able to be present, virtually or otherwise.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yeah, and then we, at least it seems that the four of us will be here present. So, Counselor Clark, you take care of yourself, and, whatever we can do to help.
I think
Okay.
we
Thank you so
know
much.
our direction, so.
Yes.
I do. And that's why I want to be there as much as I can.
I think it'll be, it'll be some tough questions, tough discussions, some tough truths that I think we're aware of in terms of costs and what that may look like and the next steps. But I think the other cities are in there with that same mindset.
I think if we can keep leaning on we were gonna pay more anyways, but basically what are we getting, receive in return as our model and kind of our foundation of why we are,
Well, it's not just what's next year or 5 years, but
Yes.
what's 20 and 30
Right,
years
yeah. It's
look
not in the
like.
moment,
I
but
just can't afford it. That's
really,
the long term.
it's really a regional approach and solution for longevity. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's really what we're doing. All right. Well, with that, any other questions? Nope. We're adjourned.
See,
Yes.
Thank you all.
thank
Good
you.
night.